And Texas A&M University Corpus Christi is beginning their distribution of grants from the CARES Act to students. TAMU-CC received $10.1 million with at least half the funding allocated for emergency financial aid grants for students. To benefit the most students possible, funding has been capped at $1,800 per eligible student. The CARES Act provides federal aid to help students cover expenses related to the disruption of campus operations because of COVID-19. For more information on eligibility, the application process, and the act itself, you can visit our website, KIIITV.com.